Yeah, I think the question of diabetes and work is a really, really important one, actually. For a very long time, I thought it was a bit of a non issue. But the more I've worked, the older I've got, the more I've concluded that actually this is a really important topic to be talked about. Um, in the shortest summary, I would say that my work hasn't been impacted by my being a type 1 diabetic, really ever. But I do think that I have been impacted by work. And that's because there are a lot of demands in the workplace, and when you're meeting those demands, inevitably you make your diabetes a bit of a second-rate topic, and I think it's really important to recognise that. Um, just in case you're not aware, there is legislation to protect diabetics out there. The 2010 Equality Act specifically protects type 1 diabetics, and lays down in law that there should be accommodations made by employers just to assist diabetics with the small amount of latitude that is needed to be able to look after their health as well as do a good job. Coping with hypos at work is it's one of those things that really depends on the situation that you're involved in. So my working life has largely been something which has been desk bound, but involving lots of meetings with other people, often large meetings, often presentations, that kind of thing. So a professional life, and in many situations, having a hypo is something that you just deal with really quietly. You just sit quietly for 10 minutes and you deal with it. But of course, there are more challenging situations. Things like giving presentations, or being involved in very kind of intense, lengthy workshop situations. There's not a lot of room in those scenarios to have a hypo. And that can be really quite challenging. Something that you really do have to kind of deal with quite assertively, in order to make sure that you're looking after yourself as well as looking after the work situation. Can people help? Yeah, absolutely. They can. Be engaged and ask your type 1 diabetic colleague what you can do. I had a really wonderful colleague who is still a friend. She's very dear to me, and she would take it upon herself to just get me a sandwich at lunchtime. And no one's ever done anything like this before. But literally, she would kind of she'd go off, and then she'd come back and she'd say, "I got you one too." And that little gesture, well, it wasn't little, it was incredibly generous. But that made such a difference, because it was the difference between me managing to eat my lunch at the right time versus the wrong time. I think those kind of things, they make a real difference. So yeah, huge thanks for that one. Yeah, so when I look back over my period in the workplace, it's not hypos that are the biggest challenge, although I think most people would assume that is the kind of biggest issue. It's not. For me, it's been those periods when my bloods have been running high, and very often, I have gone many hours without having a moment to check my blood sugars. Now that was a much bigger issue before I got Freestyle Libre, but it remains a problem. You still have to stop and have a moment and think about it and check where you're at. And I've run high bloods way more times than I really want to reflect on, because I will have been doing a lot of damage. So that's definitely been the biggest issue. I must say, with the Freestyle Libre, the alarm functionality, alerting you to when your blood sugars have gone to a certain level, it's really key in situations like this. So we're making strides to help. But even then, even with the alarm, you still have to deal with it, right? And you still have to monitor it. So. Is there anything I would do differently if I had my time again? Yeah, there is. I used to think that I was, very open about the fact that I was type 1 diabetic. I made sure people were aware of that, and I thought I'd done kind of everything I needed to do. But when I look back over my working life, I can see that I made a lot of sacrifices myself, sacrifices that will not have helped my health and well-being. And I do think that there was room for me to manage that situation better. Um, the thing I would do differently would be to explain in greater detail to the people that I work closely with, about what, having high blood sugars in the long term does to me, and about how they can help me, by reminding me to take a break, by appreciating that, very long meetings are a problem, or that intense periods are, more challenging because I won't be thinking about my health. And I do think that, generally speaking, people are there, with really, really good orientation towards helping and kindness and support. And the thing I think I missed the trick on was, tapping into that. So I wish I had done that. That's my regret. I think when I summarise everything, in terms of top tips, it comes down to communication and forward planning. It is a good thing, I think, to tell people, when a situation is going to carry certain challenges for you, and to think through in advance how you would want things to happen. One of my key regrets is that I just haven't been more assertive about, stopping and having my lunch at the right time, in busy circumstances. I am sure, with retrospect, that had I gone to whoever, the person was who was chairing a particular meeting, and I'd said, look, please don't, go through 1 p.m, go through 2 p.m, at 3 p.m, say, look guys, we really ought to stop and take a 5-minute break to have some food. That's something that I would really appreciate you not doing. Let's be a bit more managed about this. I think if I'd done that in my career, I think people would have accommodated me. But I never asked. And so I think it's probably, a good thing to ask. And I think it's a really good thing for people to understand that, being a diabetic involves, more than just the jab, that you are thinking about it all the time. And again, I think I could have done a better job of just, making my colleagues more aware.